Yay. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I've had a really productive morning so far, so I'm excited for this. I'm in the zone, ready to go.
That's amazing. Welcome to the podcast, Finding the Power Within.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
It's so nice to meet you. And I'm so grateful that Roman could connected us because I feel like we will give value to people together.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
gonna be nice to get to know you more.
You as well. I know it's great to have these like global connections. I mean, him and I met at an event in Sweden, and now I'm back in Canada, and here we are. Now you and I have met, and I love that about the online world. Like, there's pros and cons, right? Like, we can get a little bit caught up in the social media world and this and that, but the one thing I love about it the most is just how it really does connect us from all different parts of the globe. You can have friends in different countries who you've never even actually met in real life, but you've connected over common interests, over creating impact, over bringing value to an audience. And like, I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing how we connect and then can on social media and things, and you can come far with it, but just having this ability to just talk to each other face to face, but still fake to face, face to face, but still in completely different parts of the world, that's so valuable. um and also to not be confined, because I've found in my life before that I've not had that many people that were in alignment with me and who I am as a person
Hmm.
around me. I haven't
Hmm.
had a really big friend circle. I've had a couple of friends, but still not a big friend circle that is just aligned, and I haven't been the most social. Let's just put it that way. But then when you find people that actually have the same core values as you have, and they're on the other side of the world, and now you can connect, it's just amazing. um and I've found that in my growth journey, it's been just to be able to connect to people in a completely different way than I've been used to. That's, I don't know where I'm getting with this, but it's just, yeah, value. Because now I can also understand people that have been more social in regular life in another way.
Hmm.
I can oh, this is how it is to connect to people. That's a new that's a new feeling. Yeah, I don't know what your story is with connecting to people, um, and how you found it in your life, um, before joining the more online community. I mean, I know me and Roman are completely different. He just connects to people just instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Um, yeah, I mean, I think for me, like you say, sometimes those people that are in your immediate circle, people that you grew up with, your friends, your family that are, kind of the most immediately close to you, depending on the kind of person you are, like, I feel like you and I are similar that we are kind of a little bit different, right? We're the black sheep. Like, we're kind of like the cycle breakers and the change makers in our family of our generation. And once you connect with those kind of people, like once you meet those kind of people, I feel like it's so obvious. Like, you pick up on it right away. You're like, oh, you're just like me. You have the
yeah,
same, like you said, values and perspectives and thoughts and like just ability to be open and maybe not having like the same ideas and opinions as someone, but being open to share those ideas and opinions or have others share those ideas and opinions and really just like listen and like appreciate those for what they are. I feel like for me, I really started to connect more deeply with people on that kind of level when I started my spiritual awakening, if you want to call it that, or kind of my healing journey, once I hit my personal rock bottom and then started to do the work on myself, more aligned people started coming in. And, you know, just thinking about it now, actually, I'm having like a really beautiful reflection on that. And I think before I went through that process, perhaps I wasn't having those kind of connections with people because I was disconnected from myself
Yeah.
more so than, I became when I started working on myself and looking inward and doing all that inner work. Because then, yeah, like, I mean, you become a more elevated version of who you are. You become a more grounded version of who you are. You kind of reconnect with who you are. It's not like maybe not so much becoming, but just kind of reconnecting is probably a better word, because like you
Yeah.
always, your soul has always been your soul. And perhaps when you're growing up, we grow up in these like conditioned environments and societies that try to make us believe certain things. And once you kind of have an experience that allows you to take a step back from that and really start to go inward, it changes your vibration, and you realign to yourself, and then vibrationally, energetically, you're going to attract people that are on your same wavelength. So I think, yeah, as we continue our journey of healing and growing and understanding ourselves better, when we start to see those relationships and those interactions, become more normal to us. And I think being like in tune with recognizing those people right away is also something that becomes a little bit more of a strength as we grow on our own, journey of healing and self-discovery as well. Like you can kind of see someone from across the room and maybe hear someone speaking to someone else like across the room, and your ears kind of perk up and you're like, "Oh, who's that?" Like they seem
Mhm.
they seem cool. Like I want to go meet that person. And you can kind
Yeah.
of just like, I don't know, pick up on it really quickly. Um, I think we've all had that experience where you meet somebody and it's usually by accident. Like it's not like a plan, you're not intentionally going to meet this person. It's like you just happen to bump into this person, whether it be like through work or a mutual friend or, a connection online or something. And we have that right away. You're like, oh, I really like this person. Like they're like my soul family, like my soul sister, my soul brother. And I think that's so awesome when we have those experiences, just like connecting with someone like right away. Like I have a few people in my life like that where I met them through other friends and we maybe met and it was like a short instance, thinking of one girl in particular, I met her through a mutual friend, and a little while later, like a couple months later, she lived in a different city to me, and I was going to that city, and I messaged her, and I was like, "Hey, I'm jumping on this flight, but I need somewhere to stay. Like, by any chance, could I stay at your house?" Like, I had met this girl once, and I went and
Mhm.
stayed with her, and we just had the best chats about boys, life, business, all the things. And then from that, one time staying at her house, we've stayed connected, and now we live in different countries, and we're still keeping in touch. And I honestly, I don't even know her that well in terms of like having spent a lot of time with her, but it
You
was
just
just
connected.
we just connected, and we've stayed in touch, and we continue to stay in touch. And it's just, I'm so grateful for those kind of connections. Like they're so important. And we don't, have to talk every day or anything like that. I mean, she lives her life and I live mine, and whenever it works out that we get a chance to talk, um it's magic. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's so valuable with those people you meet that just click, and you can talk to them when you have, like you said, like when it just aligns and
Mhm.
you can just connect with each other. And when you do, it's like you've known each other forever. And then you go a really long time and don't connect at all. Then all of a sudden you just come back to each other. And like you said, I have a friend of mine that, yeah, me and her have known each other for really many years now, and we've been really close. But I mean, in the beginning, we like talk to each other maybe once a month if we were lucky.
Yeah.
um, and then it went like a couple of months, and then we talked again. And but we were always like, oh, we just picked up where we left off.
Yeah.
And that's what I call like a soul connection. It's like, yeah, we already know each other. We don't have to think about how we are and how we behave around each other.
Yeah.
Everything is totally cool. It's
Yeah.
you don't have to think about anything. And I think that also has to do with how more people are actually coming into our lives now when we have come further in our healing journey, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Because now we are also opening up for more space because we can hold more space within ourselves.
Yep.
And we know ourselves better. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. And I don't really know like where to begin with the whole emotionally just healing and getting to know yourself journey, because like you said, like when you have hit your rock bottom, which can be like your rock bottom can be totally down in the dumps, and your rock bottom can be here.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter. But when you have hit your rock bottom, you can build yourself up from there, and then you get to know who you actually are. And from there's so much transformation happening. There's so much healing of things that you didn't even know you needed to heal. And from there, your life is just like bound to get better. And that is something that I think you have to tell yourself when you are in that place of building yourself up again, because it's going to be going up and down, up and down, and up and down. And it's so important to just go back to the point of, oh, how far have I come? And how can I see that in my life now? How can I see how far I've come? And just taking notice of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And that all ties together with this, like having connections with people. Because if I wouldn't have come this far that I've come, I wouldn't have connected to you. I wouldn't have connected to Roman. I wouldn't have connected to Stella that I had on the podcast before. And there's so many more examples.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to get people to understand how important this self-growth journey is, how important it is to take that serious.
Mm-hmm.
Because it can be so easy to just not relax into, because you don't really do that, but not feeling good, because that is what you know, and then everything else is scary. And it's scary to go on the self-healing journey too, because then you don't know. But it's just worth it when you see like those small things like just piling up in your life getting better, and then all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're like, oh yeah, I was there like a year ago. I wouldn't be able to sit here and like me now talking to you on the phone and recording a video. I wouldn't have been able to do that a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just like take notice of how far you've come.
Yeah. No,
And where you're
that's
coming from.
yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I actually had a conversation. I was interviewing someone for my podcast yesterday. We had a conversation around some of these points that you just mentioned. And you know, it's it's really it's really about focus. It's really about like what are you focusing on in terms of your journey. And I think a lot of times we can get caught up in, well, I know I get caught up sometimes in like looking at the big picture and the big goal and seeing my big dreams. Like I've got a vision board full of stuff, and it's like really focusing on like the what's the word I'm looking for? The progress we've made rather than the progress we still have yet to make. I think that's like a really important part to note because it's really easy to get caught up in and kind of focus on like, oh yeah, but I'm not there yet. Like, oh, I haven't, reached that goal yet, or I haven't like become that person yet, or I still react outrageously when, I get triggered. It's like, okay, but like you said, a year ago, you weren't doing the things that you're doing now. And it's really important to focus on and celebrate yourself for the milestones you have hit and the progress you have made and the things you have accomplished rather than focus on, oh yeah, but I still have all this way to go. Um, and you can even look at that in a micro sense. You wake up for the day and you might have, you know, 10 tasks that you want to accomplish that day, or even five, or even three. And say you get 7 out of the 10 done. I think a lot of times we focus on, we look at our list and go, oh, I didn't get those 3 things done. It's like, but you got 7 things done. You got
Yeah.
7 things done out of the 10. Like that is awesome. And you can kind of take that analogy of like just a simple task for the day and a list for the day and kind of apply that to a more a larger scale in terms of like your own healing, your own journey. I look at it sometimes in relation to relationships and specifically romantic relationships. For me hitting my rock bottom 4 years ago now, I was coming out of a relationship. It was a very traumatic ending to the relationship. There was narcissistic abuse, infidelity, all the things, and it was rock bottom for me at the time. And I sometimes have these moments where, I've had a few like shorter term relationships since, and I have sometimes these moments where, an interaction will happen between me and the person, or even just my thought patterns or my feelings, the way I react. And it'll be so much more regulated and so much more advanced, we'll say, than how I perhaps was thinking and feeling and reacting to things in my past, Um, and I have those moments where I'm like, oh, look at me. Like I handled that so good, and I'll like give myself a pat on the back and I'll be like, wow, that's so cool. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I would have lost my shit when that happened. But now I'm good. Like I got it figured out, and there's always more to heal and there's always more to work on and there's always more progress to make. But I think it's so, so important to be able to intentionally focus on the things we have accomplished and the progress we have made, and the person we have become on the journey. I mean, I'm only 31 years old. Like I'm just getting started. Like I've got a lot of life to live still, and the healing journey never ends. It's always happening. Um, but it's so cool to look back and go, wow, I've become a completely different person to who I was 4 years ago, even 3 years ago, even 6 months ago, to be honest, by the way of my confidence, the way that I talk to myself, my relationships, like both my external and my internal environment. I've changed so much. And yeah, I think it's just, like you say, it's important for people to understand the power of personal development and working on themselves. And then I think it's so important to also within that remember to focus on the positive and the progress we've made, and to not focus on like what we have yet to do or how far we still have to go, because it's kind of deterring
Yeah, you
to
kind
look
of
at.
get stuck in a loop of like, oh, why am I even doing this then?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I'm never gonna make it. Like there's always there's always more to go. Like, yeah, of course there's always more to go, but that's not what we focus on. We
No, it's
focus on
like
the wins
climbing a
we've made.
mountain. Like,
Yeah.
or yeah, you take breaks when you're going up, and maybe you stop, and you could choose to look up and say, like, oh, holy crap, how far have I left? But you can also choose to look out on the view and see how far you've come.
Yeah.
What would you rather do? Look at the view or be daunted about the task ahead of you?
Yeah. I love that analogy. That's great.
Yeah, that just came in my mind now. It's like, yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And it's also a good way to remind yourself, like, oh, look at this as you're climbing a mountain. Oh, yeah, that hits home. So,
Yeah.
yeah. No, but this, I don't even know where to continue because it's just, you can continue with this topic for like days and days and days. Um, what is your biggest tip to people going on this journey? Uh, More than just looking at the positive side. Do you have one tip for people?
I mean, there's so many, but what just kind of came into my mind right then, which is what I'll just go with because,
Yeah,
you know, universe and all the magic.
yeah,
I
exactly.
th I th Yeah, I think just knowing that, you know, it's it's not like rainbows and unicorns and butterflies. Like the healing journey fucking sucks sometimes. Like it's hard and it's lonely. And that's just part of what it is. Because you know how we talked about before, um, the connections and when you really start to go on this journey that like aligned people come in and you have these really beautiful connections, like these soulful connections. That happens. But it doesn't start with that, you
No,
know? There's this really kind of yucky part in the middle where, when you do start to do the work on yourself, open up your heart and, really get real and raw with your own emotions and begin to sit in that and kind of, whether you're, for my journey, like I started off doing traditional talk therapy. That's kind of where my journey started. And I found for me, traditional talk therapy was great for giving me awareness. I think that's where my journey of like becoming so self-aware started because in having those conversations with that therapist, it really helped me understand like where my issues were kind of coming from or like what they really were about. Like you'd go in and you'd be like, oh, well, this happened and blah, 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 blah. And you'd kind of tell the story and then they would kind of reflect back to you and you'd kind of understand like what the underlying issue is. The thing that therapy didn't teach me was now how to work on that issue, right? Like I think for me, it brought a lot of light to like what my shit was, but it didn't help me to move through it. Like it didn't really give me the tools. It just gave me the awareness, but it was a really great place to start. And then once we kind of go from there and we start figuring out, okay, so well, now I know what my issue is. Now this is like some childhood stuff, or whatever it may be for you. You then kind of seek out the tools and go, okay, well, who else maybe has had this issue or where can I find, you might do a Google search and et cetera, et cetera, and you kind of start that journey, but there's this really like uncomfortable like yucky middle stage in relation to relationships with other people where like it gets really lonely because when you start to go, okay, like for me, I'll just kind of use my own like experience as like an example. I was in, like I said, I was in this relationship. And then once that relationship ended, I kind of was like, oh yeah, like I don't want to deal with my feelings. So like, I'm just gonna like party and get fucked up, like, woo, whatever. Right. Like you kind of go through these phases. And so I was really in like this party stage for a while. And then I kind of started taking things a little bit more seriously. I'm like, okay, this isn't really like, this is great for numbing my issues, but like, I'm not really getting any better here. So like, let's take a shift. And then I started doing the therapy. And then I kind of started moving away from that party scene and moving away from the people that I was doing that with. So I kind of started out spending more time on my own and going places on my own. And was that ever uncomfortable? That was so uncomfortable for me, but like it got easier. And I started off like it was incremental, right? Like I started off doing like little things on my own and then I got a little bit more confident in that. And then I could do, oh, maybe I'll, go sit at a restaurant by myself. Like that's super weird and uncomfortable. But then I did that and I'm like, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad. And then I kind of kept pushing myself and pushing myself. And I eventually at one point I went to like a festival alone, not knowing like I knew a few people that were there, but I didn't go with them and I wasn't like planning to like hang out with them the whole time. I went by myself and like that was such a cool experience. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling on a little bit here, but in the beginning, when you kind of start to understand like what your patterns are and what they have been, and you gain awareness around like, okay, well, that's not really working for me. So like, let's try to break these patterns. Let's try to like create new mindsets, create new, put myself in healthier environments and do things that are good for me. Like I started going, I tried everything really. I just kind of started putting my hands in all the pies. I was going to breath work. I was doing yoga. I was spending a lot of time in nature, going out on my own. I was doing like sound healing meditations, like all these things. I turned a lot to the kind of more spiritual, holistic modalities in order to kind of like help myself because I didn't really know. I knew that where I was in like the depression and anxiety and all that, I knew that's like not where I wanted to stay, but I didn't exactly know how to get out of it. So I just tried everything. And on that journey though, like, you have to let old ways of being, old ways of thinking, old ways of doing, you have to let that go. And fortunately, unfortunately, that also comes part and parcel with like letting people go, like people
Yeah.
that aren't there to support your journey, to support your healing. Like, the people that love you are the people that are like, man, maybe don't do drugs or like maybe don't get totally wasted on the weekend every weekend. Like, what are you doing with your life? And, like that's not so nice to hear, but like those are the people that love you. The people that are like, man, come on, like, let's go do this party, let's go do these things. Oh, skip work, it doesn't matter. Like, come on. Those people don't love you. Like, those people are just, they're there for the moment. So it's hard and it's lonely when you kind of start that because those people that you maybe spend all this time with that maybe make you feel good in the moment, right? While you're kind of escaping all the shit that you should be facing, you have to like peel away from those people. You have to create space and you have to surround yourself with people who are more in alignment with like maybe not who you are right in that moment but like who you want to become. And it does take a while to, as we described earlier, find those people or have those people come into your world that are so much more in alignment with who you are and that better version of you and that more, enlightened version of you. But there's a huge gap there in the middle. And to be honest, and I feel like, it's not just like so black and white. Like I feel like there's also like ebbs and flows of this that I'm describing
Yeah,
as well. It's
definitely.
not like you have all these friends, but they're just kind of like party friends. And then you're lonely for a while. And then, oh, you have these amazing, incredible people in your life. And then that's it. And then it's just, that's what it is from now. Like it kind of goes,
I
you
mean,
go in.
it's an easy way to explain it, but of course it's gonna go up and down. It's just the awareness of that, yeah, it's gonna go up and down. You are
Yeah.
gonna lose people, but you're also gonna gain people that you could never imagine that you would gain.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, when you're in it and you're feeling lonely and you're feeling a bit lost and you're feeling like, man, I'm totally alone on this journey, like, nobody really gets it, like, please just like know and trust that like your people are coming. Like they're right around the corner. Like probably when you're feeling that in the most deepest, darkest way, like your people are literally around the corner and like you just have to keep going. And again, like we just said, it's not so black and white like that, but it comes in waves like that as well, right? So you might experience that over again because we're constantly kind of moving through, excuse me, constantly moving through our own seasons. And in and of those seasons, I think, people come and go into our life. And so
Yeah,
just, yeah, I think that's what came in and that's what I wanted to share that, the healing journey is lonely and it's uncomfortable. But it's important. And, I heard a quote, there's a quote like a little while ago that I heard that I loved. And it's like, there's people who are going to love you so much for exactly who you are that you haven't even met yet.
yeah, yeah.
And
I
just
love
and
that
just
quote.
yeah, and just keeping that in mind because it's so true. And like I said, those people might be around the corner, they might be a few years off, but like just being patient and just knowing and trusting that like those people are coming and they're going to be the most incredible, connections that you could have ever asked for. So I think that's a huge thing to point out is that, yeah, it's not all rainbows and butterflies, but it's so worth it. And that icky, awkward kind of time in the middle where you are feeling a little lost and lonely and like you're the only one that kind of gets it, it's so important. Like that's the pivotal work that we need to do in order for that next stage to emerge.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. And it is like my story is really different from yours, that I, instead of putting myself to like doing things alone, yeah, part of that journey has been like my journey all life.
Mhm.
So my task when I started to go to therapy and I started to realize like, oh, I've not felt my emotions for real. That was a big moment for me
Mhm.
because my body had literally blocked off emotions until they were too big to be contained anymore, and then it would just be like an emotion blast of every emotion under the sun at once.
Yep.
Uh,
An eruption.
yep, kind of like that. When I finally understood that that is what happened, it's like, okay, I actually need to teach myself, what does this feeling in my body or this action of my mind, what does that equal? What emotion does that mean that it is? And it seems like such a basic thing, but when you realize all of a sudden after like, I don't know how old I was, 25 maybe, when I started this, I was like, oh, so I haven't felt emotions for like 20 years. Oh, that's fun. uh, uh, so then when I finally started to like dig a little deeper and see what it all stemmed from too, it all started with just figuring out what emotions was. But then going a little bit deeper and see like, oh, okay, it all stems in that I'm afraid of my emotions because I don't trust the reactions from people around me.
Mm.
That was what it was about for me. And that has also been why I've chosen to be more by myself, because I haven't been able to trust people
Mhm.
because it's been so ingrained in me. So what I had to do was literally exposing myself to be just vulnerable with other people. Um, and that is really fucking scary too, when you're not used to doing that. And
Yeah.
when your subconscious is just screaming at you that you're not safe, get away from here. Um, but all that work I've done, and like just like one contact at a time, and just, I mean, I even started with old childhood friends of mine. I have like two or three friends that have stuck with me through not all my life, but almost.
Yep.
And just starting to open up a little bit more to them and starting to consciously choose to spend time with them again instead of just backing off and being in my own bubble because was where it was most secure.
Mhm.
Just starting out that way, then I also started to open up my eyes to other people and like, oh, I actually know that person too, and I could actually talk to that person. This is not nothing dangerous to talk to that person. I can do something with that person too. Just that small act has brought me so many new connections too, because then I'm starting to program my own mind, and it's safe to talk to people. It's safe to take to like take time and be around people. It's safe to have fun. It's just safety.
Yeah.
So like say your version was going out partying to like just numb yourself. My way of numbing myself was just literally shutting myself in a bubble and just going on with my day and taking care of my animals, which I love, by the way. But still, it's my own bubble and staying in that bubble.
Yeah.
So then trying to get out and being in social situations that were inevitably going to be really triggering for me, but then trying to do that in a safe way.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you did, just like with you did it with being alone, I did it with doing things with other people. It's so empowering to just take that first step and like, oh, nothing dangerous happened.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually feel good. Oh, I
Yeah.
actually feel more energized because I'm proving to myself that no, not every time I spend time with people, I totally crash afterwards, because that was what I believed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that just continues day after day because I continue to be in contact with the right people. And I just want to tell that story too to everybody listening, so people know that yeah, there's two different sides of actually the same coin.
Yeah,
uh,
totally.
it's different ways of dealing with things,
Yeah.
and the approach is the same. You just have to prove, I'm saying just, but say that in quotation marks, have to prove to yourself and your subconscious that you're safe, you can deal with anything that comes your way, and it's safe to feel emotions.
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's safe to open up to people. And yeah, that will just also kickstart the healing journey in itself, because when you realize that that is what you have to work on, that just opens it up for you. That is always the first step, seeing what it is you need to work on. Like you said
Yeah.
with the talk therapy, yeah, you shine a light on what the issue is and then you have to solve it. And yeah, maybe you have help from a therapist or something. Maybe you just have to figure it out by yourself. Maybe you find a great community online. Maybe you just go on a Google dive and find the answers you need. Who knows? It's your
Mm-hmm.
journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like awareness, right? Like awareness is the first step really to becoming more emotional intelligent, to, healing your trauma, healing your wounds. Like if you're not aware of the issue, like you can't do anything about it. So awareness is totally the first step. And I love this like contrast that we have of our personal experiences, where obviously like I'm more extroverted, you're more introverted. So like you said, it's like the way that we cope with things is actually totally opposite, but the
The
issue
core
at
is the
hand
same.
is the same. Yeah, the core is the same. And one thing that you said there too that I'd like to shine a light on is you said, a small act. And I think that's important to remember because it kind of ties into what we were saying before about, focusing, like what are we focusing on here? Are we focusing on the progress we've made, or are we focusing on the gap that we still aren't where we want to be? I think remembering that like it does take a small act, like if you're in your apps, if you're in it right now, like if you're at your absolute rock bottom and like you've got a long way to go to not be there anymore, rather than focus on that again, that gap of like, oh my God, I have all this distance to travel. Like it's just, what can I do today? What's one small thing that I can do today? For you, it was putting yourself out there and, having conversations with people that you've known your whole life and just getting a little bit more open and a little bit more vulnerable with them. I think we got to remember that like doing this work is like we're constantly we're constantly putting ourselves outside our comfort zone. We're constantly stretching. And when you get not comfortable in your uncomfort, but like when you become content being uncomfortable because you know that you're growing when you're outside your comfort zone, that is such a beautiful space to be in. But just
Yeah.
remembering that like you don't have to go and, you know, quit your job or like move to the other side of the world. Like it doesn't have to be these great, huge, grand things that we're doing in order to like make changes, right? It really does come down to like small acts. So, for you, again, going and being open with people you've known your whole life. And then that led to eventually like, oh, okay, there's a stranger over there. I'm just gonna go strike up a conversation. Like that was kind of like the next step, right? Like you incrementally got more like it's almost like I feel like we stretch ourselves to the point where like then it becomes our new normal. So like you went outside your comfort zone and you probably stayed in that spot for a little while and it was kind of like, oh, now like my comfort level is like I've extended that comfort level. So now I can go and do something that's beyond that comfort level and then beyond that and it just kind of keeps like expanding and growing. And like exactly for me it was the being alone because I was very codependent in that relationship. I was very social. I've always struggled my whole life to like enjoy my own company and do things on my own. I've always been social, always been extroverted, always been outgoing, always been like kind of the life of the party. So for me, my uncomfort was actually just doing things on my own. And again, in my experience, it was the small acts. It started from coming home from work and like being single for the first time in almost 6 years and fighting the urge to like text like 8 of my friends, like, hey, what are you doing? Like, want to go down to the beach? Want to catch up for a beer? Like, what are you up to? Like, so like messaging like a heap of people because I'm like, I literally cannot stand to be on my own. And like one of the first steps was just like coming home from work and like not doing that
Yeah.
and just being like, oh, I'm just gonna go for a beach walk by myself or whatever it was that I did. It was just like, okay, for the next 4 hours, rather than trying to find someone to hang out with, I'm just going to hang out with myself. And that was super uncomfortable for me at first. But then again, that became kind of normal. I would look forward to getting home from work and having my own time where nobody was around to bug me, or I didn't have to answer to anybody or, show up for anybody or like put my energy out there. I could just like relax. That became normal for me. And then I kind of moved on to, oh, I might go. I lived in a wine region at the time and I was like, oh, I might go to like this winery I've never been to and just go do like a little tasting. I'll just go by myself, and then it was like, oh, I'll go sit down at a restaurant and like eat by myself. And that was like the next level of uncomfort. And then again, like I said, all the way up to like, I'm going to an entire music festival by myself. Like I was never going to go from, coming home and trying to find someone to hang out with to like a week later going to a festival. Like there's all these steps in between.
Yeah.
And just like focusing on that and like every day, like what can I do that's like a little bit stretchier than what I did yesterday or what I did a week ago, and just kind of continuing on that journey and focusing on like the small acts. Um, that's like just to keep that in mind, because again, we if we're focusing on like, oh man, I'm really in the dumps and I don't want to be like this and I know it's going to take me a while to come out of this, like instead of focusing on that, like how far we have yet to go, like let's just focus on A, what we've already accomplished, and B, what's that next step that I can
Yeah.
do.
What's the smallest thing I can do to move forward right now?
Yeah, exactly.
What
Yeah.
choice right now is it that brings not the most comfortableness right now, but what brings the most comfortableness in the future? That
Yeah.
is a really big difference. Um, and so consciously choosing the thing that's going to bring you more joy and more happiness and more comfortableness in the future instead of what's going to soothe you right now, that is a small step that you have to focus on all the time. And that is when you're going to hit that momentum and just like all of a sudden find yourself going to a festival by yourself.
Yeah.
like you did.
And loving it the whole
Exactly.
time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you know what? I was chatting with a friend a little while ago and I came up with this analogy and now I'm just realizing I feel like we're talking about like partying and festivals and like I used to be a party girl, okay? That's not really in alignment with my goals anymore, but I'm gonna use an analogy that kind of has to do with like partying and drinking and alcohol because I shared this with my friend the other day and they were like, "That is actually awesome. I love how you put that." So it's almost like when we're talking about stretching ourselves and getting outside our comfort zone, it's like it's kind of the opposite to a hangover. So you know how like say you're going out for drinks with friends. You're going out, you're having fun, it's kind of short-lived, like it's one night of fun and drinking and laughter and good times and but then the next day you're like ugh, like you're hungover, you're dehydrated, you feel like shit, you're tired. And that hangover usually, well, maybe not when I was like 18, but now that I'm like in my 30s, if I do drink like that, which I don't really anymore, but like the hangover lasts like 2 days, you know what I mean? So it's like that little bit of fun for like a bunch of just feeling ick after. And I use the analogy that like if you look at getting outside your comfort zone, it's actually the opposite. So it's like flip it around and it's like when you're stretching yourself and you're going to take that next step, but it's like, oh, this is scary, this is uncomfortable, it's unknown, I've never been there before, and it's like it doesn't feel good, right? Kind of like the hangover. It's like, oh, I don't like this. But then if you just be in that and you just let that uncomfort be a part of that journey and you push through and you just let it exist, as soon as you get on the other side of that, then it's like a happiness hangover. Then it's
Mhm.
like the long-term effects after are like, oh, I feel good. I feel great. I feel confident. I did that thing and that was hard. Look at me go. I can do anything. Like bring it on. So it's like that first bit of uncomfort being like, oh, this feels horrible. But then afterwards, it's like, oh, this feels so much better. So it's almost like the opposite to a hangover when we look at pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone.
I mean, it's a really good analogy
Thank you.
because that is really what it is.
Yeah. When you do it enough times, you start
Backwards
to
hangover.
recognize that. What's that? Sorry?
A backwards hangover.
Yeah, it's a backwards hangover. When, I kind of figured it out when I've just, I've done it so many times and I just thought about it and I'm like, once you get into the flow of it and you realize, like, okay, yeah, this is uncomfortable and this sucks and this feels icky, but like it's only going to feel icky for a short time and then it's
Yeah.
going to feel great. So yeah, I thought that was kind of funny and like relatable. Like I feel like it's simple and like almost anyone can understand that, right? Because
Yeah.
most people have been hungover and they know what that feels like.
Yeah, it's making it click for people. I'm pretty sure that's what's happening. I'm thinking we should probably wrap it up and we
Sure.
can continue and talk more another time if you would like
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
I'd love to come back.
and where can people find you if they want to connect with you? And I know you said you have your own podcast too.
Yeah, so I'm working on it at the moment. I'm looking at launching end of May. I don't have a date exactly locked in yet, but I am at Livia Lowder on Facebook, separated by a period. So Livia.Lowder, Livia dot Lowder. And then the podcast does have a separate account. So it's at emotions.untapped on Instagram as well. And then through there, you can find my other links to Facebook group. I'm Livia Lowder on Facebook as well. And the podcast is going to be launching, like I said, end of May. It'll be on Spotify. And I'm really, really excited about that. So, Emotions Untapped, we're talking about emotional intelligence. Similar to this podcast, it's interview based. So, I'm going to be talking to other people about their experience and expertise around emotional health, emotional regulation, mindset, all of the things. We're talking a lot about, too. I'm having a lot of conversations with people about kind of like millennial parents, right? So now, like anybody who's kind of in their late 20s and early 30s are starting to have kids. And I feel like the world has changed so much in the last 20 years that, there's a lot going on with mental health, emotional health these days. And I feel like us, the millennials, like when we grew up, there wasn't a lot of that happening. There wasn't a lot of those conversations happening. And now it's becoming the new norm. And now these as in us, our demographic, we're now raising children in a world where there's behavioral issues, there's emotional issues, like there's all this stuff going on. And it's like, well, we didn't really grow up with that. So we're not really maybe the best equipped to raise children in this like new world. So I think it's so important to have these kind of conversations and to share information and value and knowledge to that demographic because it's obviously I'm in that demographic, so it's important to me, but we're raising now the next generation. So this is kind of what the podcast is all about, and I'm talking to professionals, thought leaders, moms, like people in everyday life, and then also people who do this kind of stuff for a living. So it's really educational, really informative, really resource driven. So yeah, come and check it out. It'll be on Spotify and it's called Emotions Untapped.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been a great chat. I love your sharing of your experiences and your stories as well. And just, yeah, being able to relate and like pick apart a few things together. That was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I love to do this stuff to get together with people because you always realize something new about yourself too.
Yeah.
And like
totally.
And realize where your own gaps. Now we're talking about gaps again, but like it's like, oh, yeah, that I can actually work more with. And like, oh, I can go back to this. That's a great point. Yeah, it brings awareness back.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome.